Welcome to Process Guy. This is a roundup of our HTML and CSS video. In this video, we will be designing a full-blown website, and that will be UPS website, using all what we've learned in HTML and CSS to design this gorgeous website. So stay tuned and watch us design and explain all the tricks and tips on how to get an effective site done. Let's do this. So what we want to do right now is to start from the top. And I want to turn this top part, I want to turn it to a grid. We want to use the grid section to do this top part. And again, everything we've learned, we'll be making use of them here. So it might not be exactly what other people might want to use, but the purpose of this is to put to play everything that we've learned in HTML and CSS. Looking at the top section of this page, you will notice that you need to also study the template to make sure that the decision you are making is correct in terms of the approach you want to use to tackle the website design. The first thing that is very outspoken here is the way the template starts from the middle. It doesn't start from the extreme edge. And then notice that happens in the content side. You need to be able to understand the template before you start your design. Notice the topmost part, which is the navigational section, and also where the logo resides. It starts from the middle of the page. It doesn't start from the extreme left, it starts from the middle. So we'll take that into consideration, and we need an helper class so that it will help us to know what is going on in the scenario. We also need a way to currently show you where we are in the system. So I'm going to create some helper class, and I'll call this helper. And what that is supposed to do is just to highlight where we are in the template, and so that you can see what's going on. Okay, now we've created the helper class, and the helper class is going to stay here. Apart from the fact that it's an helper class, we also need to know that this is going to be a grid parent, so which is you can say grid item, or rather the grid be our grid container. So we're not going to use grid container and grid item because it's possible that within the demo, while creating this while creating this template, we might use more than one grid to design our website. So we won't be using this generic grid container and grid item. We'll be using something specific to the header section, because right now what we want to do is to design the header section. So we can come up with something more creative by saying, so we can do that to be header container, and we can start our style in there. And the remaining can be grid item. Of course, each of the grid item will have their name. Remember the template. Each of the item in the template we have a logo area, we have a navigational section, we have like a mini navigational section on top, and then we have the search and logo. So each of these boxes, we will give them their respective name. So let's put this here so that we can give them their name. So starting with the logo, we have, so this is the logo, the nav. On the one on top, we can give it, let me call it mini nav. So let's give that mini nav. Again, sure. So we have our grid system set up. So what we then need to do is to turn this into a template area, just like we did in our previous video. So let's go ahead and put that up. I think we have this in our memory. We will be able to call it up and then use it. So let's go ahead and design the CSS responsible for that. I want to get creative with my helper class. So I'll say for everything in an helper class, anything that has a div within an helper class should be highlight all this logo, nav, mini nav, anything that has a div and that has a class as a parent, an element that has a class that is called helper. It should be able to do a styling on them, and I want to make that interesting for us to see. This is just for visual effects. What we need to do next now is to create this we need to create this region. We need to add them to the grid area on the CSS. That's one of the requirements in using the style we want to use. So we do logo, because this is the logo we want to target, and then we use grid area, and we can specify any name we want, but we're calling it logo so that it will be consistent in being what we want to do. So we need to define this for every of these elements that we have. So we have logo, we have nav, and we're calling it nav. Then we have mini nav, we're also calling it mini nav here. Finally, we have login action. Nothing has happened. In my previous video I mentioned the reason why we needed to do this. Finally, we then need to create a class for the header container, and this is where the action begins to take place. The display has to be grid, obviously, because we are trying to display a grid content. Notice what happened immediately we tell it that it's a grid. Things start falling into place. Of course, the magic starts happening from where we specify grid template area. That's where we then specify how we want each of these items to play around. Now, I purposely put this on the bottom so that we can see that as we design it. We already had a video where we explained this. The next thing we need to work about is we've been able to define the role. The next thing we need to look at is how many columns do we have. So we have a first column which has defined this. The second column happened to be here. This is the second column, or it can even be up to here. Then this can be the third column. This one is under the third column, so we have 3 columns. So we can repeat. The next one we can repeat here. That's the nav. So the nav is going to stay here, and then we can repeat that here as well. Then we have on the bottom we have logo action, because the logo action is staying on the bottom here, so it can actually sit there. Then on the top, that's where we have our mini nav. So we have this result, but so we can look if this is close to what we want. I think this is okay. This is what we want. So let's go ahead and start designing. So our logo can sit in right here. We can move this close to this part so that we can then start designing this bit. Our logo action can flow to, or can move to the right, extreme right, while this one also can move to the extreme right. So let's go ahead and start putting our content in. So I will add our links here in form of a list, and then I will explain what's going on. So we have shipping, we have tracking, we have products. We still have quite a lot to do, so we have to be very fast. Let's get the alignment right, because you will notice the width of here is different. So let's use something that is generic, which is the grid template column, to set what we need. So the one that is housing the logo can be 80 px, while the one that has the navigation we can do in percentage, like 50%. Then we can do the remaining one to be auto. Let's see how that goes. So we have that result there. That the nav is not sitting properly, we can reduce this to 40 or 30, and that should just look better. Okay, the other thing we need to do is to have the content of the mini nav there. Let's go ahead and put the content of the mini nav. Finally, we have our login. Let's go ahead and start with one of the obvious things that we can see here. We notice that this section is starting from the middle That's what I said in the beginning of the video. We need to put our alignment to start from the middle, not starting from the extreme edge. So how can we do that? We can do that to our container here, which is header container. But I want to go ahead and create because we will still do it inside this place, and you will still do something like that inside here. So we need a kind of usable container that we can be using for something like this, because we will still do it all over the page. So I need to create a specified class rule for that, and I can just call it container, and that container is going to be what we are going to be using to contain anything that we want to put on the site. Notice that the content of the site starts from this margin here. Every other thing, if I should expand this now, you will notice that feature. So if I give this a wide, notice where the site is starting from. It doesn't start from the extreme edge. But if we go and stretch ours, you will notice that it will start from the extreme edge. So we need to correct that feature, and that is by putting everything we are doing inside the container. So we need to create this container. I will create container for this, but this container we're about to create now is what will do everything we need to do. So we specify the width of what the container will be. We could do 80%, that the container should just be 80%, and the left and right should be auto. So margin, we already know this trick. The margin should be auto, and by doing this, it will fit into the middle. So let's go ahead and do that. So what that means is this section here, we then need to say this section starting from 42 is what houses everything here. So if you put this container inside it, it should have that effect. So whatever we are doing in the future, once we just have that container inside it, we'll have this effect where it will put everything in the middle for us. So we can adjust the width to give us a preferable range that we can play with. 95 looks better, and you can have a fixed width. You can use all these other measurements to do that, to get an exact measurement of what you want. And design the menu system, and if you notice, the menu style system only applies to this, even though we see that across, but we see that the effect on other ones are different. But we'll just focus on this for now, and then we'll style it quickly. First thing we need to notice is that this style is in list effect. We need to change it to inline effect. So how do we change it to inline? This is the way you should do your menu. Your menu should be in form of a list like this, then you can style it to become an inline. That's very easy to do and super fast. So because we are going to be doing for only this, we can use the fact that it's a navigational class. We're using a navigational class that has a list. Looking for a navigational class that has a list, thereby it will target only this section, so it won't target other sections. We can repeat that for every other thing. In the nav section, we want to style this nav and make sure that all these list items here that are blocked will be inline in such a way that they will be in a straight line. That's the best way to design the menu. Instead of you putting a menu inside a grid, you can just put your menu in a list, and then you change the block to inline. That way you can then do proper spacing. You're going to see how we're going to do that here. So quickly, we're checking all nav class that has what? That has an li, that's a list item. What do we want to do to it? We want to change it to what? We want to change the display property to inline. So by doing this, we'll have this. The next thing we want to do is to give it the fonts. We're just going to use one generic font for audio websites. We change it to, we'll look at the spacing, and we create the effects that it has. So quickly, let's go ahead and do that. I noticed that these two header sections, the link are black. Notice that the link here are white. So I just want to focus on the header section here, and then I will style only the A link on the header section. So to style only the anchor link on the header section, I will first make sure that I'm inside that here, and I come in here and say, hey, what this does is that it only focus all the anchor elements it can find inside the header container. So it won't worry about this section by the time we're having that, because this section is going to have white. So here we can then decide our color is black. So we have a black color there. Then I can go ahead and implement, also there's no underline. Then I can make sure that my text to everything here, we're looking good. So since we are just styling this one now, I can then continue styling this one individually. To style this individually is tied to our nav. It's tied to our nav, and then I specify a. What that does is that every element that is an anchor under our nav element is going to be considered here. So let's have the over effects that we have here, even though we will not have it animated this way, but we'll have something close so that you can use for reference. So how are we going to do that? We want to focus on the nav, and there is an A element, but now we're focusing on the hover part. Once your mouse hover on it, what should happen? We want there to be a border, especially on the bottom, and that is 4px solid. Even though it's not going to be small like that, but it just gives us an idea of what we're dealing with. So we're going to use orange color. So if you take your mouse over it, you can see the orange color right there. You can see the border, but it's too close to the item that we have there. How do you push it further to the down? To push it down, you use padding button. Then let's give it a try again. We have that. I think we can do with this, but the color is the problem. Let's get the precise color and then we'll move on from there. Color FFC 400, that is the color we have there. The next thing we need to focus on now is the link on the right hand side. We do the same thing there, but this time around we're focusing on mini nav. So we then repeat everything we've done here. We repeat that. So since this one are like, okay, we are like doing something different, so let's go ahead and do that thing that is different, and then we do our li. What is happening to our li? The display is becoming inline. But I want to do something different. You notice that there is a line in between of the menu. We can achieve that by doing margin, or rather border. We can add a border to the right, border right, and we say 1px solid. You can do solid and you do gray. So immediately you do that, you have this thing going right here. But you know there's a padding before our border, before our margin. So it means we can reduce this to 10, and we have that one closed by. Then we can do padding right 10px, and then you can have that kind of effect there. You can have this. And this font looks like it's supposed to be smaller, so you can do font size. Let's see what 10 look like. So let's increase it by 4. Okay, let's do 3. That looks better. Another thing is, it's moved to the right. We can go there and do justify self to end. And we have that move to the extreme right. We have something stopping it at the end, a border at the end. We can target the last element and then remove that border. Target the last child and remove that extra line that we have there. So you just do this last child. I've done this before. So what do we want to do in the last child? We want to make sure that there is no border, right? So we just say none. So you can see that the last child border has gone. So we don't also want to have extra padding. We don't want to have extra margin. We want to ignore this, and then we have that feature there. Let's also push the login to the right, float to the right, or rather justify item to the right. And we just copy this, and that's login action. We'll have that there. We then need to style it. Let's go ahead and then put our login styling there. So let's see. Since we have this design lookalike in the entire page, So once we design it once, it will be easy for us to reuse it. We're going to give it a name. We're designing our button here. Let's give it a name and call it Y button. That's like yellow button. So that's the idea. So you having a dot Y button, meaning it will only apply when the element has a class, when an anchor element has the class Y button on it. That's the purpose of this a dot button, a dot Y button. So if you do it like this, it means it only apply to any element that has Y button. But if you have the anchor tag there, it means it will only apply to all anchor that you have the Y button on them. So let's go ahead and start styling this button. There's quite a lot of feature that it has, but for starters, it has a border, and the border looks as if it's not really styled. So let's just do border radius. Let's just start with 30 px, and it has padding, obviously. So padding, I'm gonna do 40 and 30 px. Let's do 30, then 30. And the background is going to be our favorite color, which is this color here. That's going to be our background. Then your color is black, I guess. Let's just stay with black now. And our background color is this. Let's add this to one of the elements, which is this one here. And again, we're calling this, the class is this. Wow, we got it almost at the first try. Let me use this opportunity to give you an idea of other things that you might find interesting, like the icon and what have you. Let's talk about it and see how you can have that there. How did they put that there in the system? You can also have it as an image, you know, and then but you can have it with other method, which I'm going to demonstrate right now. To have this arrow here, you could add it automatically to every Y button, or you could have it you can have it manually, which is very tedious to do. So meaning in all your content, you have to put this in all your content, which is very gonna cost a lot of time to do. Why not add it in the style? How do you add it in the style? We're going to introduce something new. To do that, we're going to introduce two things. First of all, you repeat the name of the class, the process, like this, and at the front of the element or front of the class declaration, you're going to have this declaration, these two dots, and then you're going to have after. What that does is that it's saying that when you've seen this element, after the element, do any style that follows. You want to style the things that follow. So what you want to perform that follows is that you want it to have a content. You want to put a content inside. We're going to be doing this a lot. You will notice it as well. This is the first time I'm introducing it. You're going to see it in other parts of the page. I'm going to introduce it in this About Us UPS as well. You're going to see that work. So what this is doing is that whenever you have this, you are saying after the element, create another content inside, or do something after the element. Whatever you want to do, you can do it. But what we wanted to do is to add content to this. And there's a property called content. And what that does is to allow you to put in content in the HTML page. You can ingest content there. Let me just say hi. So if I say hi there, you can see our hi is showing. So because we want to do the arrow sign, we can let our arrow sign show. I want to have a space, then arrow sign. You can actually put anything you want to put inside there. You could style this differently. You could even do the color to be white, for example. You could have a different style happening to everything that comes after the elements that you want to work on, but we'll just make it have the current styling that we have. And that's how we are going to do that. We will use it to also add this arrow here that you see here. We'll use it to add this About UPS. We'll use it and say we have something like this. We can use class as well. You can use class, and then I'll call it external link. So what happened to all your external link? All your external link is supposed to be added to anything that is an anchor, that is an external link. What should you do to it? Make sure that it has a content. Of course, after that element has been declared, that's what is happening. After that element has been declared, make sure that the content is referring you to another page, is having a logo that shows that you can go to other pages. So that's what will be displayed on top of this page. So I couldn't find this icon. I don't want to use images, so I will just use something I saw online that we could use. But let's try something else. HTML arrow. Then there's quite a lot of one that we can use here. So I can just use something that is like this. You could just use this and we'll have it there. And you can bring in an image, but I don't want us to waste time too much here. So I have that is what we're going to be using for all our links that refer to another page. Let's not forget our underline. Our underline is happening on hover, when we hover on this. So we're going to have that on this section, but this time around it's going to be on our A link. What that means is that all mini nav that has an anchor, that you can, once you hover on it, what should happen to the underline? It should be underlined. Let's see what we have here. Yep, it's underlined. So let's have text decoration is underline, overline, underline is here. Removing the helper class, this is what we get. It's not looking like what we have here. We need to make sure this mini nav stay on its own entire row. So how do we do that? Let's go to the template that we have here. If we come here and do something like this, there's one thing that we didn't mention, and that's how to create a kind of space in between. So if you want to have like a space on top to take the entire row, you don't want to put anything there, you just put dot dot dot, and when you do that, it creates that kind of space. So what happens if you create, let's say, logo here? Let's put logo here, for example. It creates that section where you can have logo sit on top and then you have your mini space there. But that's not what we want to achieve. What we want to achieve is that this section, that's the mini nav, should stay on top, should span across this part, so that we'll have a space that will be dedicated for nav and logo and nav intact. So let's try and see what we have. So let me put it so that it's a little bit clearer. So what this section is trying to do is trying to make sure that on top we're having another row now, which is not going to make it 3. On top of the row, we're not going to have anything on the logo section. We're not going to have anything on the nav column. We're going to have a mini nav, which is going to now span to 2 sections. So this is what we then end up to have now. So on the first thing on the row, we have a row dedicated to only mini nav. You know, we can't have repetition of mini nav here and mini nav here, and that's why we just made the dot and dot. So the dot is very important to skip an item so that you don't get, that effect. If you don't want anything there, you just use the dot dot, nothing will be displayed in that section. Then where you want things to be displayed, you have the name of the area, you have it specified there, and then we specify it here. And the last thing we have is our logo section, which is okay there. Another thing again we want to do, want to push logo section up. A way to do that is to use margin top, but we'll use negative margin so that it will take it up. So we can use minus 40 pixels, for example, and it's up a little bit. So let's do 20. I think let's do 30. I think it's okay there. The next thing we need to do is to now let's now start working on the second section, which is this big banner over here. Let's go ahead and do that right away. To implement that, we just come in here. This is where we finish our header. We're done with the header. We then start off by saying we have a div, and that div is gonna come, we're gonna call it banner. Class is gonna be our banner, and inside our banner, don't forget, we'll now have our container, and the purpose of the container is to make sure that our item is starting right the same place where the UPS is starting. Container, the container that we created. So just to make sure that everything is aligned, if I do hello here, we should see our hello, sitting the same way where our container starts. So, but we need to now start worrying about spacing. how our spacing is going to be our padding and everything like that. So let's go ahead and style our banner. Look at what our banner is going to have. It's going to have where it's going to, this color obviously is going to be there, but it's not going to have these curved edges. That's advanced CSS. We're going to ignore that for now. So let's go ahead and have our banner. We'll be picking that color. And we have that. Yeah, it's not looking the same. Notice there's a gradient from here to here. I'm going to be teaching you guys gradient, and we're just going to play with it. But before we do that, let's do padding. Padding I need to worry about is the padding top, I guess. Padding, yeah, top and bottom. So let's just do 0.40 and let's see how it works. Okay, so I want to focus on the top and bottom. I'm not worried about left and right. That's already taken care of. Then I want to make sure that everything that is in our border has a color of white. Then I want to worry about, I can specify height if I want, but let everything just play out. While we are looking at that, I want to look at how to show you, I want to show you gradient, how you can do gradient for a background if you want to do a background using color gradient. So let's go ahead and show you that syntax. You just do background, and then you then do linear gradients like this, and you specify the degree. The first parameter says that you can specify degree. I can do 45 degrees or 40 degrees, and the second parameter specify that you specify the color you want to use. I can use this color here, and I'll use also a lighter one. I'll just use two colors, meaning gradients from one color to another color. So let me just use something obvious so you can see the difference on how it moves. So you can see the sample of what we have. It goes from very light to very dark. We don't want to use something very obvious. We just want to use something a little bit off. So I'm going to first of all replace the color and do something a little bit off, just by small degree, so that it will just fade in gradually. So this is cool. You can have multiple, you can just check online. This is advanced CSS. I just wanted to put this out there. Moving on to other part that we have, let's go ahead and start building this section. To build this one, we also told you that this is going to be in the form of a link. So it's a kind of a navigational section. So we'll come here and start building that here. So we have our link there. We're just going ahead to style everything. I'm sure we should know how to do this now. So because we can't style container specifically, we can just add the style to this place here, and we'll call it menu, but this time around is banner menu. So look at how it's going now, banner menu. If you just use banner menu, or we can do menu, since this is the only one that has menu on the link. These other ones have nav and mini nav, so we could just call this menu, or we'll say banner menu. Don't get it confused. It's good for you to be specific on how you name your content on your site. So let's go ahead and make this one inline just as it is here. Then we start styling. It's a class, and we are saying that class, the list should what should happen to the display? You should do inline, and you have it that way. Then you want to make sure that anything that is a menu, there is a link that it's a menu, what should happen to the color? The color should be white. Then what should happen to the underline effect that is showing right now? Text decoration, you say none. Then you want to make sure, you can then start dealing with the font size. Let's add that to the list. The font size, you could do, let's see how 20 looks like. So the next thing is we want to deal with the spacing that we have here. And we can do padding. So I just noticed that it just there's a space that we need to knock off. Then how can we deal with that space? We can deal with it by saying on that list that has a menu class, the padding should be 0, and then we have it that way. That is sorted out. Moving on to having space in here, we can see each of the line item padding right can be, or let's do 40. So that looks better. Let's go ahead with what we'll have next. So what we'll have next is we have our search bar. Let's implement our search bar quickly. Our search bar just sits right under. So we have our content, our menu is done, our search bar will just go in there. So we have our input, so how do we do this now? We already have a class that helps us to define, this wonderful button. So we call that Y button, and that just implements that. Lovely. So it just makes our work much more easier. The next thing we need to do is to style our text box. So we can give it a class name. We can call it tracking, or let's say T-bar. Let's call it T-bar. Tracking bar. So we'll go up here, you can just style it like this. So what I think we want to do, I see around edges, border radius. I think it's just so small, 4x. Then I also see padding in all area. Let's do 10. What else do I see? I see a font size increment. Let's do 15px, and let's give it a try and see how it works. Okay, so I see border. So border is not well done. Let's do border 1px solid, and that color is going to be difficult to obtain. So our padding needs to go more. Our font size can go to 20, or rather let's do 18. Then we can do something about the padding by, let's do 13, or let's do 15. Now we can then have it maximize. Let's do width. Let's do 50%. 50% of what? That's a problem. Let's see. Okay, let's do 40%. Then you can do margin right, so that it will push our button a little bit further. That's because of the margin right, to push it further. So I think our login button, our yellow button, needs to be high enough. It's not high enough, it's not tall enough. Let's see what 15 will do. Okay, it's looking better now. It's looking better. So let's go ahead and start doing other things. So you can see that our head section is clashing with our body. Let's give some gap there, so that, and that's from our banner. Our banner needs to do something there, and that's under margin. So let's see what margin top does. Let's see 40. So okay, that's 40 for you. Let's do 30, 25. Okay, that's cool. Moving on to the next thing. The next thing is for us to have this image display here. But before we have that image display, let's put this one we have here, the text on the bottom. Let's roll text in. And I think this part needs to be, there's so much space here. The bottom needs to, there needs to be a space between the tracking, code, ship, and billing, and the text box. Let's increase the space. So where do we do that? To add it under the menu, we need to push the menu, make the menu bottom large. So let's go where we have that menu section, which is here. We'll then provide the margin bottom for that. Let's do 20px. Let's do 30. Let's see 40. 50. Okay, let's go ahead and put this text that we just copied, and that's supposed to be at the bottom of this one here, and that's going to be in a div, so that it will be in a block element. We can have it there. So you can then have that closer or further away. So we can have a class here and call these tips, T-bar tips or T-bar help. So we'll call it T-bar tips. And what are we styling that for? We are using border rather. I use margin top. Let's start with 20. See what 20 gets us. So it looks great. Moving on, let's give this height, because this height is still short. Let's add it up. And how do you specify the height? I wouldn't want you to specify height in something like this. What you could do is to specify padding bottom, rather padding bottom. So this is already taking care of top is 60. So we need to explicitly define this part here. So we do padding top is 60, then bottom should be, let's say, 120. And let's see what we have there. So we have something like this, which is looking good. Yeah, I think that's fine. Let's bring in the image. It will have to be inline. Image is inline. So how do we put in such a way that it will stand like this? We will use, there are several methods we can use, but because we are, reviewing what we've done so far, we're going to be using positioning to position the image on the right hand side of the screen. But we're going to use relative and absolute. So what are the requirements of using relative and absolute? So our image is going to be absolute. Our content in which our absolute image is going to sit inside is going to be relative. So how do we do that? So we have various options here, or we can just come in here and say this is relative, the container is relative. What that means is that we're going to create a relative class, and we can come in here and have our image here sitting right here. Let's have C, and we'll have our banner. Our banner is kind of big, so we'll make it very small. Make it small. Let's do 300 pixels. In fact, let's go and style it in our class. So we'll have a class that says banner. No, let's not do that. We make the class based on the fact that we have a banner here, banner and image, img. That's what we're going to use to call it. First of all, let's go and style our relative. And what we are doing in our relative is just say that the position is relative, nothing more. We say position is relative. The next thing we need to do is to specify that the image in our banner, by saying banner, how do you pick the image inside? We do img. So this reference to all the images in banner, but because we only have one image, we don't need to worry too much. So we'll do our position is going to be absolute. So by doing this, we'll have this effect, because remember what relative and absolute is all talking about. Absolute will start immediately, where you start. Everything within absolute is within the relative container. So we can move in relative to, the parent container that we're dealing with. What we want to focus on now, we want to reduce the width to be, let's see what 300 will look like. That's pretty small. Let's go to 400. That looks like it. Yeah, that looks like it. Let's do 400. The next thing we want to do is to move it to the right section. So we have it right, then you can increase the top section. Let's see what top 0 will look like. So we can go negative, by the way. So if you have top, let's do something drastic, or rather 100. So that is what negative 100 is. So let's do negative 80, negative 90, negative 92. Yep, 93 should be it. Okay, we have something to work with. So this is what we're working with, negative 93. And that gives us an idea of what we're looking at. So you can push back a little bit. So that's what we have there. So this part has been settled. Let's move on to the next thing we have. So we're done with this section and we can move on to the, so we come here. So instead of banner this time around, we can come, let's see how the content looks like. So we can have every other thing as a content. So let's go ahead and design this bit quickly. So I'm going to call this main. This is our main area, because that's when that's the main area. The next thing from the main area is I'm going to start putting things in container rather, container. So this is just to help us know where to start. You can see it's starting right from there, the same marking from here. So we're going to style our, let's use an ID this time around, because we're just going to have only one main, and this one main is to help us with the border here and within here. That's what we just want to target here, to just have that border specified. So we're using an ID now. So we say the margin top is kind of huge, so we can do good. We do 50 and we can go ahead with our content. This is pretty straightforward. We can do a column, 2 by 2 column, one here, one here. So we're doing a grid, a quick grid. So because we're in a main, we can say main grid contents. Then we have the items, the IV. We don't need to call the item any name. So we have our image here, and then we have our write-up here. So we have those two sitting right there. But of course, we need to change, we need to style this in a way so that the system will know that we're dealing with a grid system. And how do we do that? Come in here, we tell it our display is a grid, followed by the fact that we can then say grid template column. So it looks like a 50-50. I can use my 1FR, or you could just do your 50-50%, which is fine. So you could see that the image will be sitting right here and our write-up will be sitting right here. You can use another, you can use gap. Remember that we have gap, that's some column gap, to specify the distance we have in between this and this, to specify that gap. Let me see what 150 would do. You can see that it's pushing forward. Let's see what 200 would do. So we'll have our gap just like that. And you could also use 3 columns, by the way, and do 1FR. But this time around, this could be something huge. Yeah, something like this could work. So let's move on and have our image sit right there. So we'll have our image sitting right here. We need to save our image. Call it img1. src img1. Okay, it has taken over everything. So we'll just do width what that does is took over all the old space we have there with 100%. So I want to create the column very well so that the column will fit into the space that we want it to fit into. Let me see, we didn't provide the other part here. Okay, so this is supposed to be space, this is supposed to be space, and this is supposed to be our write-up on the right hand side. So our space, our write-up is taking too much section. Let me do 5, 4. Okay, I think this looks good. We have 6FR, 1FR, and 5FR. We have this. We could also use percentage, by the way. So that satisfies our template. I can delete the content of the space here. So this is not doing anything, it's just taking that space. We could go ahead and put our border that we have here, because we have border along these edges. Just move on and do our write-up. So our write-up, I'm going to put my H1 to represent what is happening here. And I'm going to make this a paragraph. Then I'm going to make this my link. We already have that styled already. Class is going to be Y button. Then I'm going to call it start shipment. Okay, so what I want to do is anything after my, I could just do something like this. Span plus yellow line. You can call it Y line. Make it a div. So that's to create the extra line we see at the bottom there. Here. So I'm having something called Y line. That's what I wanted to do. So let's go and style our Y line. And the purpose of that Y line is to give us that effect. I have my width. I could do 100 pixels. Then I have the border bottom, 4 pixels, yellow. I'll go and check the color later, and solid. Okay, let's pick the color. This is the color. What is missing here now? Okay, that's good. So let's have our paragraph is not missing and our paragraph is not coming up. So there needs to be that space. So let's call this our paragraph. So that all our paragraph, when we style it, it will have that effect. It will recognize the padding. So let me do margin. It's a gray, but gray kind of effect here from white to this color. Let me have that kind of blend from here to here. So let's call it gray BG, like gray background. Then we have background, image, background. Then we have linear gradient. I would do 45 degree. Then I will go from white to gray, to a very light gray. I don't want it to be obvious. Very light gray. Now I'll pick something like this. So let's give it a try and see what we have. So I want to create a new stuff here. That's inside the main. We now have, I don't want it to be inside the container. Outside of the main, this is the container that houses what we just did now. But I want it to be inside another container outside. So what that will be my background gray. So that I can then have this effect, but it's not happening the way I want it. I want it to join with this. I don't want it to start on its own. But is it having the effect, the 45 degree? I want it to start from top to bottom. Let me try something different with the 45 degree. So let me see. Let me see what 180 gives me. Yeah, I like this 180. So it's, yes, this is what I'm looking for. So it fades off from here, and then we have it getting darker here. So this is more like it. This is what I'm looking out for. The next thing we want to do is to have this call to action. This is more of like what they call call to action. So we can just have a whole class for this, or ID, or just a class. Yeah, I'll call it call to action. So we have call to action. So it's going to be simple. What the color is going to be green there. It's going to have, you can see where the content is starting. That's padding left. Another thing again I want to worry about is that the color should be white. Then the background color should be this color that we just have here. Hope I will get close to that color. Okay, let's manage this one that we have here. So let's go ahead and style what we have. You know that, notice that it's immediately after this and it's still inside our main. You can have it inside your contents. Okay, we can't have it inside our contents because we already have something that closes with the BG. So you can see that we have our gray BG here, and this is done. We are done with this. We could start up something new because we want to capture this section here. And remember, your container needs to be inside your container so that it will be housed properly. So we also need to put a space in between the nesting, because if you just put the nesting there, it will just sit right in, right close to it. So you need to have a way to transit into the nesting. So what we need to put is, so let's say the nesting flush with a white. So let's see, because if we start with the container off, so let's go ahead and start. Let's say div like this, and then let's put our call to action here. Call to action. And let's do hello. So our call to action is just sitting here. Our style is not implemented. I didn't spell that correctly. So this is what is happening to our call to action. Obviously, our call to action needs to be inside a container, which is this one, so that it will be properly put inside this format that we have. But now there needs to be a space between our call to action, or rather between our container and the previous gray background. So what I'll do is I'll create another class outside here. What that class is going to do, we're going to call it white background, kind of. Yeah, white background. I'm going to give you this kind of background for this place. So the next is going to also be the gray background. So let's go ahead and create, instead of gray background right now, it's going to be a white background. So we need to style our white background. So if we do not style it, this is what we have. So when we start this white background, what we need to do is to make sure that it has a padding, a margin up in such a way that it will give distance for us. So let's go ahead and style this, and don't forget the distance we need to put. So the distance, we need to worry about our margin top 50 px. We can do the same thing to the bottom, or just worry at the top. So you can see the distance is helping us to set. So we have this set up like this. So it has helped us with this. So let's go ahead and capture the content of what we have. So our call to action is supposed to be 2060 as opposed to 6020. Then we need to put our content. This can be H1. Let's go ahead. H1 sitting right there. We have, this can be a paragraph or small, sitting right there. Then what we'll have sitting in the front is a link. Okay. View dashboard. Put this into a row and column. We can make this our call to action can actually be a column-based, a grid-based system whereby each and every one of these becomes the item. So the first item I need to worry about is the content on this side. So all of this will be inside here, whereby the second content will now be my link, which I will put right in there. So the grid is going to be 2 column 1 row, 1 row 2 column, and it's going to be a call to action. So my call to action, instead of it being like this, I'm going to make sure that the display is a grid, and the row template grid template column is going to be, let's say, 4 1 FR by 1 FR. So we'll have something that looks like this. Then you can make sure that this other one stays in the middle. Then style the view dashboard to stay in the middle here. Let's give this a class so that we can target it. We can give it the dashboard. Let's say the board, right? And then we go and style it separately. So we do justify or align self, and we say center. Align self, center. Okay, so it stays in the middle. Let me kill all my H1. Let me refresh all my H1 so that they won't be bold like this. Front weight. Next thing we have is the bottom section, which is talking about us here. So what I need to do, I need to also implement the gray border, the gray stuff we did. So I'm going to minimize this one. So the same effect I did here, I'm going to use here. I'm going to copy what I did here. I'm going to copy what I did here and put in this section. So you can see that bit is coming up nicely. But what I want to do is I need to create a padding inside this gray section here, which is here. I need to alter this so that the settings automatically give us that space in between. And then I need to offset this one so that we just focus on the one for gray BG. So let's go and check what gray BG is talking about and focus on the padding top. I think 60 should be fine. Then that is good there. So we then remove the excess that we have here and we style this under. So we remove this main here so we can have something like this, consistency. So we'll have this, but in this case now we are changing the design of what we want to achieve here. What we want to achieve here is also 3 columns, right? 3 columns. And we're going to use the grid system, by the way. So let's go ahead and see how to implement that using the grid system. So this is what we've already tackled all this one. So here we are focusing on about us, mind you. So we can use that to style what we want to do here. Instead of us saying main grid content, we can do about us grid content. So we can do about grid content. That's what it's going to be like. So we're going to go ahead and style this. Let's go ahead and style this. Let's put it side by side with the main grid content so that we can copy the content of what we have there. So it's going to be this way, but our template is going to be a little bit different. You can see that I think they are quite equal, the contents here. So you can do, okay, so we use 1FR to have these 3 contents displayed like this. So this first content that we have image is going to be about us. This one is going to be discard, and the other one is going to be discard. quickly, let's go ahead and start styling and remove the content that we have there. It's not going to be image as usual. It's going to be like this. We have about us sitting right here. Then we have an underline here. I think we dealt with that underline by saying, I think it's Y line we used to style that. So we did Y line and that gave us the underline. The next thing is our paragraph to display this content that we have here, and we have that there. So while that one is still cooking, we can clear everything we have here to sit this section. It's just that we need to see what is happening. We've not been using our helper class. So these are our helper class that we ignored. So this is what is going on here. The next thing we need to do is, so this is a new kind of button which we've not seen before, but we're going to style it anyway. I think it's only happening once. The button just appeared once, but we're going to style it anyway. We're going to come in here and do our href, and it says read stories. As usual, we give it the styling class and we do B button. That's blue button. Let's quickly go ahead and style it. We're going to copy our Y button as well. The next thing we can do is to now start building this we call this card. We used to build this card, so we're going to build it. And how do we build it? Is very straightforward. We just need to put an image up and then the text on the bottom. That's just what we need to do. Let's go ahead and give it a try. We like to create a gap in between this. Use our grid gap to do that. We call it column gap. Let's see what 10px has for us. Let's go to 20. I think that's fine. We'll go with 20. Let's use 20. Now we can remove our helper because we will be building a card. So the card will also come with this kind of container. So we don't need to add our helper class. So this itself can be our card. That can be your card, such that you have a section for your image. Your image will be here somewhere there. You can put your image there. So I've already saved the image, src, and I have my image as img2, and here image is big, and I have the second one as img3. What I want to do is I want to target anything that is inside a card that is an image. You should, make it in the size of the container that is inside. Let's go ahead and style our card. We need to create a star card, but before I create a star card, I want to move this image the way it's showing. I want to reduce it to, let's say, 100%, so that it will fit into the width of what we are looking at. So that is first solution. The next thing we want to do is to make sure that, let's now put the content on the bottom. That's the card now. Let's now go to the bottom of the style. The bottom is supposed to house, the content here that I want to put. You can put the whole thing in a container, by the way, or you just do it individually. So, and the whole thing now is even a link. So when clicking on it, it's taking us to the whole page. Everything can be in a very big container like this, house it like this, so that this can be let's say this can even be h1. We can always style it. These are h1. It starts that way. I'm doing both of them at the same time so that we can be seeing the results, but I'm going to maintain the same design pattern. I'm maintaining the same design pattern because I'm going to be styling them, and both of them are going to be receiving the same effects as I'm styling them. So you have your H1 designed already, your H1 designed. The next thing is the content, like a brief content of what it is that I'm supposed to say, and that can be in your paragraph, which is P. Okay, so we have this horrible looking template that we need to make sure it looks like this. Fair enough, we've already been able to do the image, which looks like the most difficult part. Now, the thing you can see here that is visually obvious is that it has a border around it and it has a background color of white. So quickly, let's go and do that. Style that in our card. Let's style that in our card. So we have our card definition that says the background is white. The other one is that we have a border radius of, let's say we can do 5. And as you save it, you get to see the effect of what's going on. Are we having our border effect added? So let's do border 1px solid and gray. So let's do 10, have that looking cool there, and I can see that my image is being cut off here. We can have that fixed by adding the radius also on the image. We can have that on the image and then we'll have that fixed, but we don't want that to happen on the bottom. So we focus on the top right and top left, and that should fix that. So we have that on that portion, and the color looks a bit too sharp, so I want something like this. The spacing between left, right, so we need to make sure that everything that is inside the H1 inside the card, what should happen to it? Or rather, remember we have a container in the card, so we'll use that container in the card to make sure that the spacing in between, the content of the card is properly spaced, just like we have it here. We have something that we used, so I'm gonna say card body, but we've not actually styled it. So let's go ahead and style it. So, and it's gonna be card body, so that we can be seeing the design as we put it there. Now this is the container we did, but we didn't style it, so let's call it card body. So that's the body of the card, and the purpose is such that you can move the content anyhow you want, you can style it any way you want. So that's the advantage of having a container class for anything that you do. You can move the container any way you want. Let's start with the padding. We're already good with the top padding. Top padding looks okay, so we're worried about left and right. So let's do 20 like this, and it's looking cool, but I think we need to move it more. Let's do 30. 30 looks to be okay. Now the next thing we need to focus on is the font size of the H1. So I do card body. Any H1 inside card body should have a specific font. So I can do font size of that can be, let's do 16 and see the results. That's small. Let's do 20. That looks better. And let's now say we're looking good. Only that the color of the text, the color of the paragraph is a little bit different. So how do you style the color of the paragraph? So we put every paragraph inside the body, that is card body, every P inside the card body, we want to specify the color, so we could use gray. So we have this resulting effects. So this is how you can target quite a lot of things in what you're doing. focus on also the bottom. So we need to come and do this manually. Left, right, and bottom. We have that done. You need to create a kind of space in between your border gray, that's the BG gray that we create, gray BG. We need to create a space in between, just like we have here. There's no really space in between the image, so we need to create a kind of space there. So let's go to our gray BG here and create a padding bottom, but it will not be this much. But let's see the result that we'll have. I think, okay, let's use this. Now the next thing we have there is the announcement. We're going to skip this announcement section. Let's move on to need help, and then we'll go to footer straight away. Then we can call it a wrap. Let's go to need help, but the need help is going to be what now? It's going to be white background. So we have gray. Let's copy our white background here. We are done with the gray background. Then you do your DIV class. Okay, we have it copied already. So I repeated the white background, but I'm not doing call to action. So I remove call to action. What I'm focused on doing is having need help. So in here, I will just do my H1 and say need help. So we have the need help standing right there. The next thing is this link we have on the bottom. So let's have those links display inside the container. You'll have it as links like this, the way I have been creating it. I'm gonna create tracking help. Okay, I think that is what we have. So the next thing is you can just implement the same thing, but this time around, and around the last one, you don't need to put underline. That will give you that effect. So let's just go ahead and do that. So I want to create the second one. So that will be 2. But in this case now, we are everything set, but I don't want the underline effect to happen to 2. I'll make the li, but this underline effect, I don't want it to happen to 2. So I will repeat the same thing, but while I'm not dealing with 2 alone, I will say it should be none. So that way, anything that is 2 will not have the second line item. So let's go ahead and see how I can put that 2 there. So if I put that 2, it only applies to the first one. We can tick in our this guy, ticker. Then you can style and remove all these other things here. Okay, taking much time. Let's go ahead and do the footer, and we can call it a day. So the foot section is where we round up everything, and then we can take a look at what we've been able to do so far. So the foot section is going to have a new design kind of that we've not done, and we're going to call it class and footer. We've not created footer. Then inside the footer, we're going to have our container, because you notice that everything still starts from this edge. Okay, so even though the footer is a little bit deeper, because it's not starting from this edge, but we can make our own start from that edge. Next thing, we want to create this column system, 3-column system, even though they have like the fourth one, but the fourth one is blank. So we can go ahead and create something like that. So I will create a 4-column, and I'm going to call this footer grid. Footer grid. And inside the footer grid, we have each of the item. I'm not going to name them anything special because they're not going to be special in any form. It's going to be straight. So I'm going to say this site is here. Then here I'm going to call it other UPS sites. Without us. Then we have a blank section here. Let's go ahead and put this. This should be way easier for us to do now. So this is how it looks like without having our settings. So let's go ahead and put our settings in place. First of all, we need to worry about the footer section. Put this color to it and make sure it is all white. As the color is white. So color white. The next thing is we want our background color to be, I don't know what this color looks like, but let's set something like this. I think this is more like it. So we have that set. The next thing we want to do is to make sure that there's a space in between here and here. So let's do padding, margin top 30 px. Then let's do padding before our content starts. Padding top as well. Let's do 30 px. And let's see what that results into. So these are 30 px. Let's turn it to 60 px. Okay, that's more like it. The next thing we want to focus on is making sure this grid is showing the display is a grid now. Let's make it that the display is a grid. Then what will make it align, obviously, is our grid templates, or rather, column for column. So we will maintain one FR in 4 places. We have it this way. So this should be, I think this should be applied to the footer grid, not the footer itself. So all these 2 things need to be applied here. Okay, so that will have this effect. The next thing we need to do is to push the sites to the bottom. So we need to have margin padding bottom needs to be very large, like 100. Okay, that looks good. So we're good with that. The next thing we need to put is to put this content. Again, we're going to have all these things in form of a list that allows you to properly, easily, style them. Quickly, let's do that. I'm going to do that quickly. So let's style the links we have here. I've gone ahead to write all the links out. So let's style everything and make sure we're using the footer grid to take into consideration all these elements so that we don't go and mistakenly style other things that we already have styled. So everything is going to be under here, and I'm going to apply the same styling to everything. So I already copied that. Remember, it's a list. We need to turn the lists. We don't need to turn it to inline again. It's fine as it is in a list, but I want to make sure that we remove all those bullet points there. How do you remove those bullet points? Those bullet points can be removed under list style type. It's a property that allows you to specify the kind of bullet point that you want, but in this case we just say we don't want any. And notice that we're targeting all font footer grid li, that's the list item. Then notice how it is being displayed. I want to forego the padding of that, so I could do something like this and apply for on other lists the UL. We because the UL by default is formatted to have a padding. So I can use padding, just set it to 0. So that should align that properly. But focus on the styling, on how it looks like. Again, we're just focusing on this, and all the anchor which is A, that is under footer grid, should be white. Color should be white. Based on the design, there's no underline, doesn't have any underline there. So we use text decoration. Then another thing you will notice is that there are space in between each of the elements. There is properly evenly spaced. So we can have that under LI here. If we put that in bottom, let's do 10 and see what happens. So you can see the space that we're seeing there, and they're kind of small. The text is kind of smaller than what we have here, but we'll work with it. Also, the color is different. The color is not white. Looking at it again, the color is not white. Okay, let's try this color. Okay, good. This is the best we could come up with. The next thing is that it's smaller. The font size looks smaller. Let's see, 13. Oh, great. So let's see if we can make this brighter. Then increase the spacing a little bit. Then we are good. We're almost good. We're almost good. The next thing we need to do, I think we are good. The next thing we need to do is to go ahead and add this bottom part to it. That's pretty easy. We just come to the section here. You need to be able to track your content and not miss your tag. You can see that we have quite a lot of activity going on here, and notice how I collapse these tags, and that allowed me to know where I am and allowed me not to mix what I'm doing. So this is all the grid content that we just did now. You can see how easy it is for me to that I've collapsed it, and I can go outside that grid and continue as if, you know, nothing happened. I can continue and put my horizontal line here. I'll just do HR. I don't want to style anything. I just want to put horizontal line there because we need to close this right now. Next thing I need to put here is then I can put all this in my list and collapse it just the way we did this section up here. We've already done something like this before, so you can do that method and collapse it here. And finally, we have our copyright section. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put our copyright section here, and as a form of assignment, you can repeat this and see how I implement the bottom section here. So I'm going to call this small and have this there, and I can have that color portray the color of what we have here to match. So let's go ahead and portray that color. I'm not inside footer grid anymore, but I'm inside footer, so I can use footer and small together and style the HR as well to give me this color effect that I want. So here I said I'm in footer, and what am I styling? I'm styling small. Every small in footer should have this color. So you can see that the color has changed, and I want every HR in footer horizontal line should also have that color. So that color is not being implemented, but that's fine. We can either use a border, but I will just leave it like this. But we can use a border to also draw this effect and have that color specified there. Thank you for staying to the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on bell notification in order to be notified when we release new videos. See you in the next one.